In this video, we'll discuss the exam structure. This is how NCARB actually built the exam from the ground up, and the inner workings behind how the exam writers will write each of the items on the exam. The A.R.E. exam is written based off of an adaptation of Bloom's taxonomy for education. The structure looks something like this, where memory is at the bottom, understanding, application, analysis, evaluation, and creation is all the way up to what we're trying to do when we learn. We're trying to learn so that we can do. For the architect's registration exam, it's simplified in the sense that this exam has no rote memory questions whatsoever. Remembering is off the table. We're also not actually performing architectural services here on this exam, so we took creation off the table as well. So really what we're looking at is how do we get from memory to creation? And so in this taxonomy, we are looking at understanding and application, analyzing, and evaluation. These are packaged together as groupings of skill sets that we can use to evaluate our performance as architects. So we have understanding and application as a package, so understanding something and applying it. And then we have analysis or analyzing and evaluation. So analyzing what the situation is and then evaluating what to do about it. Everything on the architect's registration exam, everything in the test specifications is broken down this way. All the objectives have a certain understanding of whether or not it leans toward understanding and application or analysis and evaluation. The NCARB A.R.E. handbook does define understanding and application as the deduction of meaning from information, demonstration of comprehension of concepts or processes, application of processes or procedures in familiar or unfamiliar situations. Similarly, the A.R.E. handbook does define analysis and evaluation as the reduction of overall concept into its component parts and the determination of how those parts relate, and the overall structure, arrival at judgments based on the given criteria. So these things are kind of long-winded definitions for what they both mean, but simply put, what it really means is for understanding and application, it means using that rote memory. The memory, the base knowledge we have to understand it. And then we're going to use that in real world applications. And so that's the application part. So we understand what the meaning is of the memory we have, and then we apply it to that skill set. Then we also have analysis and evaluation. That is identifying relationships between related ideas and articulating the meaning. So what does it mean when you see a relationship between two things? It could be an action meaning, it could be a reaction meaning, or it could be nothing at all. It is of paramount importance to note that versus previous versions of this exam, this one has no rote memory questions, none whatsoever. All the questions are going to take understanding and application, and analysis and evaluation in order to complete and find the correct answer. Here's an example of a very simplified version of a rote memory question. What is the maximum slope of an ADA compliant ramp? You know the answer is 1 to 12, you answer the question. It's not very dynamic. And here's an example of a type of question that has gone from rote memory to understanding application or analysis and evaluation. It says, a client wants a delivery model for their project that will ensure the following needs are met. Fast timeline, architect protecting the owner's best interest, third-party assistance to manage budget and schedule, which model will suit the owner's goals. The answer options, you get them, you pick the right one, and that's because you have to analyze what could be the correct answer and then evaluate the outcome to make sure that it is meeting all those needs. Regarding the actual exam itself, there are some things to consider about the questions, or items as NCARB calls them. First and foremost, these items are written by industry professionals. These industry professionals are volunteers, so they actually sit down with NCARB and volunteer their time to write the questions. Secondarily, all items on the exam are worth only 1 point, so they have equal value across the entire exam. That means that if you encounter a question that is particularly difficult or troubling you, you can actually mark it to return and come back to it later. And then finally, there are trial questions on this exam. It is unknown which of the items that you encounter on the exam are a trial question or not, and it's also unknown how many of them there are. NCARB does not release this information. As stated on the last slide, the item writers are volunteers, and they're not professional exam authors. Therefore, there are some bumpers set up for the question writers to keep the format consistent and to avoid any complaints of potential trickery or deceit on the part of NCARB. Those bumpers, as I'll call them, or rules for item writing are as follows. First off, you must use positive construction. This means that all questions are written in the present tense. It's as if it's all happening right now. Secondarily, they all use the active voice. And then lastly, there will be no negative words, so you won't have to worry about double negatives. It also won't ask you what not to do. It will ask you what to do. This exam will test you on one single knowledge or skill per question, and that is absolutely critical. You will not have to respond with a complex series of steps in order to answer these questions. However, that doesn't mean that it's only one step for every question. For instance, financial questions are a good example of the type of question that can take a few steps to handle, especially when it comes to firm finances, where you have to do a few complex formulas to get to a point of calculating, say, your billing multiplier. These questions may utilize some contextual knowledge of other skill sets, but they're not necessarily going to be testing you on that. And lastly, exhibits are only included on a question if they are necessary. Otherwise, there will not be an exhibit. So if you see a question that has an exhibit, you better make sure to pay attention to it because it is essential.